Right. Well, thank you. So excited about this opportunity to speak. So again, my name's James Woodson. I'm a board-certified emergency physician. So I practiced medicine for many years in several different states in the United States. So my passion was actually to really focus on systems of care. That was one of the things that I just found absolutely fascinating. How in the world can you combine multiple different organizations, resources, and people together, including the processes, the regulations, to basically surround a patient quickly and provide care and serve them. And so for the past decade, what I've been studying is how can you leverage mobile technology to be able to bring people together and actually create a shared consciousness around a single event. And how can we be more efficient and more resilient? So my disclosure is I am the founder, CEO of Pulsara, which is a connected healthcare worker platform. So we leverage real-time communication, telehealth, and logistics to unite care teams not only within organizations, but even more important, in an underserved area across organizations. So there's a ton of different, digital health is one of these things that is massive. I'm kind of off trend a little bit in that I am focused on the acute care space. I do love the emphasis on the chronic care management, on health, on wellness. I think that's where the emphasis as we're starting to decentralize should be. But at the end of the day, there are things that you need to go into the acute care providers. You do need to unite care teams. And so one of the things that we'll be talking about today, just to kind of set the stage, is unstructured, undifferentiated patients. So when an event happens, how do they enter into the acute care system and get the right patient to the right facility, the right resources, and the right time? So a good example of that are time-sensitive emergencies, heart attack, stroke, trauma, sepsis, cardiac arrest. Those are some of the leaders. So these are low volume, but very high impact encounters. The morbidity, the mortality associated with these events. And this, honestly, when you think about it, is the last opportunity to provide preventative care. That's one of the areas that I think we want to focus on. The other is just really distributed teams. So especially when we're dealing with teams across healthcare organizations, whether it's EMS or ambulance, nursing homes, basically referral facilities, tertiary care facilities, the receiving hubs, and then it's even transitions of care. How do we hand off patients from one organization to another, especially for events that need to transit several organizations in one time? So these are things that clinicians like myself, we feel these problems. So we have all of this technology that surrounds us, but at the end of the day, we feel lost often. We don't know where these patients are, where they're coming from, what exactly happened. Data is not available in the EHR. And when we start to think about how we can grab the data and unite care teams, what all needs to be done? So one of the key things that we want to focus on is a definition, team cognition. This is something that when you talk to CIOs across the world, they feel like when they implemented all these EHRs, they were so focused on EHRs and data management, they kind of lost sight of some of the key things that need to be done. One of these is team cognition. So in simplest terms, it's how we think. It's how data, information, knowledge, important to the functioning of a team, is organized, represented, and distributed within that team. So just because the data may be in a EHR or in a specific data repository or there's a dashboard, if it's not presented in the right way, it can be almost useless to us. So that's one of the things that when we start thinking about what are the opportunities out there, I think we really need to focus on. So what's the environment of these conditions that we're talking about? So the patients, unlike some of the chronic care management, they're unstable, they're often in transition, they're undifferentiated. They just know something's bad, something's hurting, something's off. And most importantly, they're not scheduled. The providers that they're trying to unite and we're trying to gather a team around, a lot of them are mobile. We act like something coming from emergency, from ambulance to the hospital, if we just get the information to the emergency department with a phone call, we're done. Well, what about all the providers that are going to be taking care of them? They're mobile, they're in chaotic environments. Often you don't know which providers are needed, so how do you tag that right person so that they know they need to respond to this? A lot of times there's middlemen in the way trying to facilitate, but they're playing the telephone game. So the technologies, a lot of the technologies are not interoperable, similar problem to the data problem, but if you look at how we unite organizations today in healthcare, it's still fax, phone, and radio, oftentimes for the real-time communication to say, hey, I've got something that needs to move. The data often is in silos, and sometimes when it's not in silos, it may be in one location or one system, but I have to click all around. That team cognition standpoint, the context isn't there. And a lot of the data and technologies are based on proprietary systems as well. In the teams that we're trying to mobilize, they're often very rigid in function, and they really struggle with situational awareness around a specific event. And so when I want to look at these modern platforms here, so how many of these platforms leverage at the base fax, phone, and radio to accomplish what they do, right? None of them. There's no efficiencies in this. But when you look at the healthcare system and look at a traditional patient journey, all of these red lines are basically communication fragments, communication channels that open and close, open and close. And so we're literally playing the old school telephone game. So a medic may send some information by EPCR, another ECG transmission, then they pick up the phone and call report to someone that never takes care of the patient to say what's coming in. Even if the information is transmitted digitally, it's often not pushed to the right care team members, especially if there's downstream care team members that need to be there. There are some of these intra-facility systems. You see this star diagram here. These are fantastic systems to create a shared consciousness. Some of them struggle around team communication, and really all of them are relegated to within one silo, one organization. There's nothing that connects us together. Those platforms that I was looking at a while ago or had up there, they connect buyers across the world, sellers across the world, logistics organizations, financial institutions, all with a couple of taps. They never leverage communication in logistics like we do here. A similar problem, I've kind of talked about this a little bit, is when you look at devices out in the field that generate data, they basically, you might have some monitors that have their own dashboards, and then EPCRs that have their own dashboards. And so already, where do the providers at the hospital, if they want to see real-time streaming data, go? Especially in the context of a patient that hasn't even arrived yet. Similarly, for things like stroke, there's all these AI tools. They have this similar problem. So how can you aggregate that data, like a Priceline or some of these other concepts that aggregate all the data into one location for a very specific context for a specific job? So this is data that's hard to find. I'm going to present United States data. Every country has their own data. It's hard to find this stuff because this is things that people don't like to talk about. But when you look at medical errors and miscommunication, it's the third or fourth leading cause of death in the United States. 250 to 400,000 people per year die from miscommunication. 10,000 serious complications every single day. It affects 1 in 5 Americans. The fascinating thing about this is 80% of these occur during transitions of care. We need to pause and look at that and really reflect on what can we do better to serve our patients in these scenarios, in these events. So I think it's important you can look at other costs of ineffective communication. So 63% of time is wasted in patient transfers, playing the telephone game. 43% of time on emergency response coordination. 70% of lost time on treatment delays is secondary to communication inefficiencies. On and on it goes. You can even look at how much time the provider per day spends just with wasted communication. And what could we do if we had that time back? So really when you look at the root cause problem of a lot of these, is disconnected human work is the root of the problem. And so I think it's really important to look at other industries. There's a brand new industry that's focused out there that's called the connected worker. And there's these connected worker platforms that started in manufacturing, and it's starting to move into other industries. And I think there's a lot that we can learn about these type of platforms. And so in our context, it's the connected provider. So it's any provider integrated into their environment by connective technologies. So it's a combination of both hardware and software. So we have to use the right hardware and software components. And these help contextualize a provider's actions on behalf of an individual patient within a broader system in real time. Why I have on behalf of an individual patient underlined, there's a lot of systems out there that are looking at macro data. So they look at hospital resources, they compile all of this data, and there's other systems that help connect individuals at a organization, but they leave the care team members out of the loop. And so how can we get the information all the way downstream to all of the care providers that are going to be taking care of this patient for something that's not in my system? It's unscheduled, undifferentiated. And so really the sweet spot is combining where data intersects with logistics in real-time communication. This is the sweet spot. Again, there's some systems that focus on macro level, meaning many patients. There's other systems that are maturing and that are developing out there that are able to do this on the individual patient level. And this is what we've been focused on at our company for the last decade, figuring out how can we get these people connected. So from a hardware perspective, if you look at a lot of these systems, they're based on web-based. And so the early stages, a lot of them were basically desktop versions. But again, most of our providers are mobile. And so how can you combine technology that we all carry in our pocket, make it secure, make it private, make it safe, so that you can leverage ubiquitous technology to keep everyone united on the same care team. So when you look at kind of Communication Basics 101, you have a noise that you have to get through to get your communication across. So it's really important that you choose the right communication channel. So again, this is how it's presented. And so a lot of times we don't focus on what is the right communication channel to deliver information from one party to another. One of the things that is really important is almost all of this communication done in healthcare today are linear communication channels. And so they're very fragmented. There's multiple. You saw all those red arrows in that earlier slide. Not only are they not connected, but if that chain breaks once, we've really affected that patient's outcome, either with a significant delay or sometimes things that generate more patient harm. And so instead of one-to-one or one-to-few, there are these networks that are being built out there that are called all-channel or star-channel, or what we talk about at Pulsara as a single dedicated patient channel, where it doesn't matter what organization you're with, we can find you, we can drop you on what we call the red line or on this channel, and everyone has access to everyone else, even across organizations, and you have access to live audio, live video, and multiple other communication modalities. And so thinking kind of beyond what a telephone can do, imagine every acute care provider has access to everyone else with a phone call type scenario where you touch a button, the phone rings, and instead of a phone call, it's video. If you need to show the patient, you can. If it's just with each other, that works. Even group video across organizations is now possible. It's key that these technologies know how to interrupt workflows. It's very, very different than just posting something on a website and expecting people to go find it, like going and finding a teleconference meeting. You need to drive that communication to them, especially in these environments. The other thing that we can leverage is asynchronous communication. So I think everybody in this room I've witnessed during this lecture do asynchronous communication with someone external, right? Which is great, right? You can multitask, you can do that. In healthcare, we don't have a lot of opportunities for asynchronous communication with the technologies we use. And so whether it's audio clips, photos, team messaging, whether you're doing integrations, bringing data in, So even if you're opening up a different tool or technology, if you can open it up in the context of a patient, that is very, very powerful. So the next thing is basically when you build these systems, I think it's important to think about, well, this all sounds great, but is there anything really valuable out of it? Is it just sound like a great solution looking for a problem? So we've seen across the industry where we've implemented, whether it's improving patient safety, reducing treatment times. Obviously, one of the biggest things we're focused on is improved outcomes. One of the largest things that we see are improved efficiencies, so they can do more with less. We've proven where you can go in and reduce these treatment times for time-sensitive emergencies, and now their length of stay in the acute care facility is decreased. False activations is a great example. If you don't get that ECG to the right provider for something like a heart attack quickly, they may activate the care team, which is very expensive, only to find out they didn't need to go for an emergent angiography. So of course, improving quality metrics, and I think one of the things that's really foundational to us is improving both the patient and provider experiences. And so when you're really looking at systems like this, there are tons of low-hanging fruit to improve quality and reduce the cost to find that value, to find that ROI. So one of the things about these systems as well, so we really focus on not just uniting care teams to improve the actual event, improve care for the actual event, but you can also capture amazing data. So if you look at the data that we use for systems of care, which is uniting care teams across multiple organizations, we're often relying on the EHR data. So I contributed to the EHR data for many years, but what I do is I take care of the patient live, and then I go back and do the documentation later. So not only is the data not available, but the data for timestamps, it's kind of made up, right? Our data quality is often not real good because we actually take care of the patient, we go back and we document the time. I think it was 11:05 when actually it occurred at a far different time. And so when you're looking at uniting data across organizations on the atomic clock, on a universal timer, now your systems of care data so that you know what you need to do root cause analysis of patient fallouts from your ideal times. Not only do you have data to show individual cases, but amazing data across whatever region you're looking at, whether it's a single city, whether it's an entire emirate, whether it's the nation, okay? So you have amazing data from systems of care that's accumulated across multiple different organizations. A lot of it's captured passively, which is very important as well. One of the other things that you can do is you can provide instant feedback to the care team. So a lot of people don't think about ambulance, EMS, emergency physicians. They do their job and then they go and kind of disappear because you've got other patients. Well, it would be great to get that real-time education and feedback. That's one of the things in system of care. If you look at centers of excellence, they provide all of that data back to the entire care team, even across organizations. That helps the system get better. But instead of spending hours aggregating this data, it can actually go back in real time while that case is fresh, close that emotional loop, which is a huge thing for provider health and job satisfaction as well. So these platforms have been studied for years. So our studies go back even 8 years now. And basically in our platform, we've shown pretty much everywhere we go, we reduce treatment times by about a third. What we're studying is not just pre-hospital notifications or not just hospital this, or it is single channel communication across organizations is what we're studying. And literally every case study, every analysis we do shows significant treatment times by looking at those efficiencies. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about if you're looking at building one of these systems of care, what do you need to look for? If you're looking for a technology backbone, infrastructure that can scale, I think it's really important to look at these. We've seen a lot of failed attempts through the years, and so we'll talk about some of the things that we've learned. So one of them is having a system that's agnostic, that's non-proprietary, because a lot of these tools are designed to encourage device adoption or encourage this or encourage that. These things need to be built on an open platform. So some of the things we were talking about earlier of being able to aggregate all of these data points from different systems, we need to be open. The other thing that I think is really important is one of the most powerful tools I personally believe that's been invented in healthcare is what we all carry in our pockets right now, okay? We need to use common technology, common hardware, things that are ubiquitous that everyone carries in their pocket, and make sure that it's safe, private, secure, all of those things so that we can get this adopted. Another one is make sure that this is designed for healthcare. I think a lot of organizations out there, they look at some of these tools that are publicly available, aren't designed for healthcare, and they try to adopt those. We've seen those fail over and over again because they don't really create a shared consciousness around an event. So I think the other thing is make sure that it is patient event centric. A lot of people want this longitudinal care, which is absolutely necessary. But you design programs for longitudinal care, outpatient care, wellness, you design those very differently than something that's emergent, that you need to start, spin up a system, do your thing, and then you go back to business as usual. The way that you design those is totally, totally different. And so I think that's critically important when you're looking. The other thing is a lot of these systems are designed and they think they can just go out and make it available across organizations. But the backbone of a platform that's designed to specifically unite organizations in who owns what data, who gets to see what data, you can't just use the same system for everyone because of the privacy and security laws. And so that it needs to be designed specifically to cross organizations. If you leverage something that was designed intra-facility or just within an organization, you won't reap all the benefits that you could have. Not that you don't need to pursue those, there are purposes for those, but it won't solve the problem that we're addressing today. Another one is cloud-based. So I know there's a lot of anxiety still in different regions about cloud-based technology. This is one of those things that is becoming more and more adopted. There are cloud-based solutions out there. This is the future. This is where the industry is going. We see a lot. We know here there's a lot of things that are still Bluetooth. The struggles with trying to move ECGs, for example, in the out of hospital space with Bluetooth. Very, very difficult. They often drop. You have to pair them. You have to connect. The modern way where you can rapidly build these systems and have data move in is cloud-to-cloud integrations. And so going that direction where you're focused on cloud and cloud solutions, I believe, is very important. Another one is really making sure that it's designed to scale. So part of systems of care that scale means I need to use the same tool all day, every day, that can scale to meet different stress events, especially in the market that we're talking about. And so if you can use things for heart attack, stroke, trauma, routine transports, routine interfacility, routine 911, this develops that muscle memory so that when it scales up to a disaster, to an MCI, to a pandemic, load balancing, you're using the same tool, you're very comfortable with it. One of the first things that goes down in disasters, in major stress events, is communications, and they fall back to their old way of doing things. If you have systems of care that scale in a technology that they use all day, every day, it makes it has immense benefits when that scenario does hit. Sustainability is another big one. We see a lot of organizations or governments that want to build these type of tools. It's very difficult to do, especially if you're iOS and Android. You want to be backwards compatible across multiple different versions, multiple different operating systems to have the reliability. People don't realize from a sustainability, they often put a budget out there, build something, and by the time it comes out, half of it's already outdated. That's just the reality. That's the reality of technology. And so making sure that you're plugging into an ecosystem that is able to take care of those things and understands how to keep everything up to date, compliant, and secure with the evolving mobile operating systems that we're plugging into. Another one is flexibility. In order to do all the things that we've been talking about, you have to have an incredibly flexible platform. Another one is making sure that some of these visions are really big. Do you think you can do it all at once? And the answer is no. You need to work with people that have and understand a phased approach of how you can deploy this within a major metropolitan region or within and across an entire state. And I think the alerting, being able to interrupt workflows is one of the critical things as well. So with that, I think we are at our time. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak. If there's any questions, happy to take those. And always, if you want to connect after this presentation or later, my contact information is up there.